let's talk a little bit about the way you see the rowing stroke and how that's either been a constant since Cal or changed or developed.
Another good question. I certainly think the most important technical aspect in rowing is the ability to apply power on the blade face. So it's like pulling hard or power. It's when we go up for technical rows, there's never like a technical go, like just don't do no pressure on the blade face. The ability to apply power is first and foremost. And then and I say, like, for our rowing 101 with us, it's your drive oriented, pressure on the blade face, and then on the recovery, and now just relax and let the boat run. We can talk forever about the technique, but I'd say when people look at us row, they're like, oh, why do you pause at the finish? And like, oh, you're just trying to emulate Ian Wright and the Australians. I'm like, no, we've been kind of doing this for years, and just sort of how things have worked out. So we are not a fast hands crew. Okay, here's some videos.
Yeah,
we're not one of those.
Do you want to talk through this?
Sure. I'm trying to see who's in here. Here's looks like, okay, we're rowing on Ladybird Lake, and this is a couple of 8s that we have, so we're probably out there just rowing 22 strokes a minute. And so you notice, like, there's definitely a bit of a pause at the release, and then everything, the arms come out first.
Dave?
What's that?
Why is there a pause at the release?
I think that's where, the best way for everyone to gather. It's kind of funny. I did a whole presentation at this coaching clinic back in January, and the whole, what was the title of the title of it was Start with the Finish. Yeah, I think start with the finish. So I think best way to get everyone matched up, if we can get, best way to get boat feeling pretty good is to have rhythm. And I feel for rowing, best way to get rhythm within the boat is to have everyone pull arms in together, match up at the release, and then out together. If everyone can in together, release, and out together, the boat will have rhythm. And first and foremost, and so much starts with rhythm in terms of the feel and the flow, and even like the setting, having the boat set up for you. So first and foremost, when we start in the fall, we get everyone matched up at the release. Here we go. Or not just match up at the release, but pulling in together, release together and then extend together. So we do a lot of pausing at the release. We do a lot of feet out rowing. So I think this is kind of good. I haven't coached in 3 months. I'm starting to get back into the coaching, the technical side of things.
So it's interesting, people were labeling you as Ian Wright, the famous New Zealand coach currently working now in Australia.
Yeah, but if you looked at our crews from years ago, we'd been doing this. So, but it was kind of funny after the Sarasota World Championships, we had a little coaching seminar, and Ian spoke there, and he talked there, and I was like, thank you. This is great. This is great. So we're not as extreme as the Australians are, but we are definitely we're not a fast hands crew, and I'm not a coach that ever says slow down the slide either.
We've got some film of you. I think this is working just before you went at the national championships. Just a short clip, and not so much a pause here.
Right. So so if you play this at full speed, I showed this at this coaching seminar, because like, oh, at the pause, I'm like, yeah, there's a pause at 22 strokes a minute. But then once you get above 30, and they're probably going around 36 here, the hands come in and then right back up. The pause goes, once you get above 30 strokes a minute, the pause just goes away, So, but I think, and I think I was showing this clip, and it's like pausing at the release, but they're still pulling all the way in and staying connected, until the blade comes fully, until the blade comes fully out, So I think that in terms of, us rowing low stroke rates with a little bit of a pause at the release definitely helps out at the higher rates to focus on staying long and connected all the way through to the finish.
That's really interesting. And I think I was watching your, we can have a look at the video of that NCA championships in 2019, which is, one of the most amazing women's 8 races I've seen, I think. But just how loose and fluid the crew was as they came forward in, in really fast conditions as well.
Well, geez, thanks for the compliment. That sounds good to hear. And that was certainly a process. And even like that, the morning of the race, when we knew it was a tailwind, one of the kids in the boat, she was just so nervous, like, tailwind, I'm not getting a tailwind, I'm not getting a tailwind. I had to talk like, you are good in the tailwind, don't worry, and then she stepped up and did a great job. So, yeah, that was a great race, heartbreaking, great finish by Wattle, great last 500 meters by Washington.
Did you think you were going to win that race?
Yeah, certainly for us, because we're never a crew that we never focus on getting a lead in the first half of the race. We're certainly like, and we kind of feel like if we can if we get the lead at 500 to go at 1500 meters, we're always going to finish strong. So when we came through at the 1,000 and took the lead, it's like, all right, here we go. This is good. We're in a good position and we were moving. But then once Washington started coming and knowing the power that they had in that boat, I was like, oh, maybe we started going a little bit too soon. So
yeah.
Credit to them. They had a great finish. But I give our crew a ton of credit. Like, they raced their hearts out, and it was a great crew, and it was a great race to be a part of.
So where were you watching from? Could you have a TV screen at the finish?
Yeah, I would have been watching this exact. The one thing I think there might have been a little bit of a delay. So they had the on the water announcer. I think the on the water announcer and the video might have been a 10-second delay or something, but nothing great. So so we would have just been watching this. So I would have been like in the coach athlete area, which might have been like 200 meters from the finish line, on the shore, which you're seeing here.
I know that.
The NCAA championships. I don't know if you know how NCAA championships work, but it's it's not just the boat category, but it's a whole team event, which I love. I love that it's a whole team event. In fact, I'd say the Olympics would benefit from having a team medal.
Now I love that thought because I think I'll be with you there as well.
Yeah, it just adds to the dynamic where everyone's in it together, and our first 8, they're screaming their lungs out for the second 8. The 4 is like, just glued to the video screen how the first 8's going to do. It just really brings the whole team together. Yeah. So they're off. Maybe I'd like to get some advice from you. I've spent so many, looked at the clip of the German men's 8 time and time again, and how like their first 5 strokes and how they just look like they're doing nothing, and it's just always so calm.
I love watching that 8, and it's really interesting how, in the men's 8 race, how other boats, they try to move quicker off the start by pulling harder or pushing harder, and it just doesn't work. Yeah,
and something like I think it might have been you saying with the Germans men's 8, like, they don't worry about the first 250, but from 250 to 500, they're always looking to be the fastest moving boat on the water.
Yeah,
and that's something for us. It's like, don't worry about those first 20 strokes. But let's make sure from 250 to 500, we're moving well and establishing the rhythm. And for us, we're always like, let's just make sure we are in the race at the 1,000-meter mark. We don't have to be leading the race. Let's just make sure we're in it. And by in it, meaning we're within half a length, or we're within contact or something. Let's make sure that it's certainly in the race. So we're the third one up from the bottom, I think.
Yeah. So Washington is second up from the bottom. You're the third one up from the bottom. And is it Michigan over there? So
so it looks like we're coming up to about 500 meters, and Michigan started taking the lead. And so at this point, I would have been thinking like, all right, Michigan, they'd had a good year. They had a really good crew, and look, they were racing really hard in the regatta. But I'm thinking like, all right, Michigan, are they going to be able to sustain this? And we knew that Stanford was good. So of course, when I see like, oh, first, second, third, look, where is everyone? But I'm like, oh, we're just right there in it. But also with the drone, trying to feel like, oh, what's the angle here? And then looking like, man, Michigan, they're really going after it. Like, are they gonna, do something really special? I was coaching a Cal crew back in 2013 that had one of those types of NCAAs. where it got them really fired up for the final, and they pulled it off and they won it. But yeah, so now I'm like looking at us, and for us, with our race plan, we don't do things based on distance within the race. We do it always based on time within the race.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the clock like, all right, hey, we're at 2:30 in. Like, okay, so when I see our bow, I see, lane 4, like, all right, at 2:40, like, all right, we're doing exactly, like, I'm looking at where it is, like, in terms of the clock, like, all right, they're doing exactly what they should be doing.
Is that a rate push? Do they go up there or
no? The rate, if the rate did come up, it would have just come up just because they're focused on, like, all right, more focus, more power. Let's looking to go a little bit faster. So we never really talk about stroke rate within the race. We talk about effort, and then effort should translate into boat speed possibly, and if stroke rate comes along with that, so be it. So I never give them, this is the stroke rate you have to be at,
That's a pretty handy lead to have over Washington at this stage of the race. You must have been thinking this looks good at the time, Dave.
Yeah, well, the top 2 crews in the country were Cal and Washington. So I'm thinking like, okay, what's going on with them? But I'm like, okay, well, my goodness, like this is looking really good for us, and especially, yeah, we're in the third 500 right now, 3:45. So we're getting ready. So we're getting close to around 7:50 now.
They're so loose on that shot, that close-up shot. You can see the women there just out forward. I'm looking at the 5 women and 3 women in particular, nice and loose, fluid around the back.
Yeah, they'll be happy to hear that. With our 5-seat Aspa and our 3-seat Fran, yeah, and they put in a lot of work during the year and became quite skilled. So I think now this next shot we might have taken the lead. So I'm thinking like, okay, at 4:20 we have the lead, and yeah, like I'm thinking like, all right, this is going to be real. We're in a good spot. And I start thinking, of course, 100 things going in your head. And it's like, oh, we've got 8 seats up on Washington and Cal, and we should be moving pretty good here.
Yeah. In a tailwind.
Of course, it's so nervous and the adrenaline pumping, and like you're just, trying to will the boat to the finish line, and but now I can see Washington starting to come into us like, oh, knowing that they've got some strong, they're well coached and they're strong and they've, they know how to win.
What's their average erg, Dave?
For Washington, I don't know. That'd be a good question for Yaz. I mean, I think with Sophie Asamanaki, you're certainly bringing the average down.
Yeah.
They might have been down around 6:45 or so.
Well, she's 5-seat in that 8, was she?
I believe she was 6-seat.
6-seat.
Yeah. So now we're coming up on the last 250. It's like you can see Washington really started to turn it on. So now I'm like, oh, of course, when momentum is on Washington's side and they were down so far, and now they're just really moving. So I would have been in that crowd right there, screaming like, Texas fight.
Yeah.
But now at this point, I'm like, okay, Washington looks like they're going to come through us. But now, like, okay, let's make sure those other crews aren't surging and coming back on us as well.
I mean, that's just crazy to have 6 women's 8s all overlapping in the final of an event like this.
Yeah. But I think that's what happens when I think something with NCAA rowing, like there's a lot of good programs out there, a lot of good teams, and you take everyone's best and put them all together, and that's where, even like with the Olympics, like, I'd love to see like a men's 4, women's 4, like every country put together their best 4, and those races would be amazing, So when you have everyone's best against each other, so now like looking at the time, like, oh, so close, and realize like, oh, how close Michigan was to us. Michigan had a great race.
Michigan were doing a lot of celebration at the finish there. They obviously knew they got
a great result for Michigan. So,
yeah.
So then with that, with the NCAA, so now and typically the first 8 is the last race of the regatta, but because of wind, they had that event first. So now I'm like, oh wait, Washington just beat us in the first 8, and thinking the second 8 and the 4, I'm like, oh, it's going to be. I'm like, Washington's going to win again.
Yeah.
Because I knew that our second 8 could possibly beat their second 8, possibly. but I knew that our four was going to be good, but their four was really good. So, but now it's starting to do the points like, okay, what's going to happen, with the whole team championship.
That's great. So what's your views on what should happen to the Olympics then, the Olympic program?
My views, being an outside observer, I love the NCAA, how it's, I love the NCAA, how it's a team event, and I love how it's our best 8 against Washington's best 8, against Cal's best 8, against Ohio's best 8, and I'd love to see at the Olympics them to find a way to get all the best athletes racing against each other, so whether that's doubling up, or having pairs, singles, first half of the regatta, and then 4s and 8s, second half of the regatta, and it culminating with an 8, or, I'd love to see if every country put together their best 4. I mean, the Australian 4 is great. The British men's 4 is great. I mean, Croatia, imagine if, the Sinkovic brothers with Damir Martin, and then someone else gets together in a 4. Like that racing would be amazing.
I'd go for doubling up, pairs, singles and doubles in a quad, and then everyone putting together for the 8. So I'd have less athletes and more doubling up. And I think the team idea is great. I'd probably have an ergometer race in the Olympics.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah, like they do in the Hansa Cup. And to be really out there, if I think most cities have a river going through it. I'd kind of have like a longer distance head race in the 8 or something like that.
Now, what are your thoughts on the open water, on the coastal rowing?
I think coastal rowing is. Rowing's got to be seen to do something. I think coastal rowing is something that rowing happens to have. I don't think it's the answer in terms of making rowing sexy as a sport and attractive to youngsters whose attention span is 10 or 20 seconds.
Right. I mean, because I've tried to watch it. Like was it in Hong Kong or somewhere?
Yeah.
Like there's the the cargo ships in the background and going around. I'm like, this is not in. Like it was not captivating at all. I can understand like the beach stuff and the waves and all that stuff, but I just didn't find it interesting.
I can see beach sprints might have more of a sexy feel to it than coastal rowing, round boys.
Right. But the 6 lanes, 6 boats across lanes, like I think that's when the story is told right, when people understand the story that's happening. I think like I was saying earlier, I think you do a great job. Or I think we were saying off the air, you do a great job like telling the story and the emotion. When people know the backstory within what's going on, and the drama around it, it becomes so interesting. And I've said for years, like I remember 15, 20 years ago, my mom became a fan of the Tour de France.
Wow.
And she was watching 3 hours, 4 hours of bike racing because the whole story of Lance Armstrong and the whole doping aside. And I was bike racing, I got into bike racing, and some of those guys are in the Tour, with Tyler Hamilton, I had raced with at some point.
Oh, really?
I knew some of the names, but, like they're watching 3 hours of bike racing, and so much of it's like, because Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin made it interesting.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it was an interesting story to tell. Guys like going up a mountain for an hour. That isn't necessarily interesting, but when you know the story behind it, it's interesting.
Yeah. So there's this podcast called The Row Show, and they 2 South African guys, Lawrence Britton and Jake Green, and they have some questions they ask their guests at the end of a session, and one of them is, if you're in charge of world rowing, what would you change now?
Okay, if I'm in charge, I think I think you might have touched on this. I would say limit the numbers. If every team, if every squad, every country is limited to 13 or 14 athletes, 14 men, 14 women, and then you figure out from there. Okay, who rows, and in the first part of the week, singles and doubles, you know, and then the second half of the week, it's quads, quads and fours, and then eights at the end, you know.
Yeah.
If somebody's racing in 2 events, 3 events, that's great, you know, because other sports, they're certainly doing it. And I think rowing shies away from it. So have more people rowing in more events, limit the numbers. So I feel like anyone who's going, you shouldn't have a development type of boat at the Olympics. You know, if someone's like, okay, didn't make this boat, didn't make this boat, didn't make this boat, like, okay, but now you can make this boat.
Yeah.
You know, as development, that shouldn't, you know, I feel like the Olympics should be the peak. You know, and so limit the numbers, to have the best athletes racing more and racing against each other would be great. And yes, and having a team medal. So if it comes down to the women's 8, the men's 8, you know, and even those people who are not in that boat, they're going to be like, come on, because I want that team medal.
That would be fantastic.
You know, and I think that would be amazing, you know.
And do you have a race? Do you have a favorite race that you sort of look back on or you might watch again?
That's a good question. I'd say, what race have I watched the most? There's quite a few that I've watched quite a bit, but I'd say the women's 8 from 2008 in
Beijing.
I think I could go on and on. The women's 8, like first year that the USA won, I think that meant a lot.
Yeah.
The women's 8 in 2012, you know, like people that I couldn't know in those boats, you know, but then, you know, we can go on and on about different races. Just thinking like, what was I watching the other day? Like, oh, I want to go back and watch that race with the 2000. Don't know why I'm like talking about 2008 so much, but was it the men's 4 in 2008 that Aussie men's 4 took off, right?
Yeah,
and then that was
the race. Yeah.
Like, didn't look like they were. I forget he was announcing like, oh, it doesn't look like the British are going to get it, and then like, okay, here comes Haji.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, like that great effort. So, I don't think there's any one particular favorite race, but I'm a fan. I'm definitely a fan of rowing.
And this year, you know, in terms of coming 4-3-2, I mean, I know it's a fantastic result for the program to be second this year. So what were the chances of you know, being able to have pulled off a first place this year in 2020?
I'd say the chance, there was certainly a chance. I mean, of course, other programs out there, they'd have a lot to say about it as well. You know, I don't want to give any bulletin board material like, oh yeah, we were doing this, because I know Washington and Cal and Stanford and Michigan and other teams out there, they'd have a lot to say about it. But I'd say by many indications, our team was progressing better this year than they had been the year before.
Wow.
You know, in many respects, I think our 2020 team looked to be faster than the 2019 team.
So you sent me a clip of the Chinese 8, I think, and I'm just wondering, is that the 8 that never was
for us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like that boat, they did pretty well that day. There were a few people.
How did it go?
What's that?
How did it go?
I'd say probably the way you'd expect it to go. I mean, I think we would be a good under 23. You know, I think our boat would be a crew that could possibly win the under 23 world championships. And that Chinese boat, I know they needed to qualify for the Olympics, and Hartmut Buschbacher coaching them, and they were going pretty good. So I'd say for a good under 23 8 versus a good senior 8 to possibly, you know, to race at the Olympics, I would say it went the way you'd expect it to go. You know, they were faster. They were faster, but we provided good competition for them.
Wow.
And for that 8, the 8 that never was, you know, we were trying, you know, we had that lineup for the day. We actually made some switches from the first session to the second session. We did 2 sessions that morning. And then we were trying different combinations and different people at stroke, different people at 6 seats. So who knows what it was going to be. But, crew was going well.
We were talking before, you know, we went on air just about you're expecting athletes back in September.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, late August, classes start. And even I think our international athletes, they might get a notification pretty soon that international athletes, we might want them back even sooner, because I think the international athletes going to be kept to quarantine for 14 days.
Oh, really?
Here, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Here at the University of Texas, they're going to be taking certainly a lot of precautions, making sure we do things right, best practices to make sure everyone's healthy. Because also we don't want to have someone come in and then a whole bunch of people get, if they're sick, a whole bunch of people get infected. So they're going to be very, very careful and smart about how they go about things.
Well, Dave, I know you've got a meeting coming up. It's been the most wonderful chance to spend some time chatting. So much enjoyed it. You're absolutely wonderful person to talk with.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been.
I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, and that's long overdue.
Right on. All right, book them. The hand sign, you got one of that here.